Welcome back to the Daily Dope Show. I'm Brando, the Weed Commando, and yeah, hasn't been a whole lot going on news-wise, in my opinion, as far as you know, historical events in the reform of marijuana laws. But we do have things that are happening, and you know, like this is like, I was gonna do a video like I did last January about all the things going on in the legislative sessions, but I see no reason to, because in my opinion this is all just, it's all, I don't know, everybody's doing this thing. It's like a dance where they can try their hardest not to actually make policy change until the last minute, until the guy next door does, until the guy down the road does, until it's okay because this guy did it or those people did it over there. And you know, we've been doing this dance in New Jersey now for a while. We've been doing this dance, and other states started doing it a couple years ago and last year, where they started talking about it or having discussions about it. And there is some real things going on, and I am pretty excited about a lot of things, but overall nothing that I feel like, you know, deserves my attention too much anymore, as I'm trying not to make videos about every little thing that happens. But this got my attention lately because I don't know why we're still dealing with it. But I'm going to talk about Kamala Harris, because it seems like we're being forced this candidate for president out of, you know, and why I say that is because the same forces that put Hillary Clinton in front of us last time are the ones behind Kamala Harris being propped up. And when I say propped up, I mean these people are not popular. Hillary Clinton, Kamala Harris, these people aren't popular. They're basically people that either A, nobody likes, or B, nobody trusts. And I'm not talking about just Kamala Harris and Hillary Clinton. I'm talking about like a bunch of other corporate Democrats. You might hear me say that word a lot while I'm talking about this, because, well, that's the problem in this country. And if you think that there's a political battle of ideologies between, you know, Republicans and Democrats, or Trump and people that hate Trump, then you believe the illusion. The only political ideological struggle in this country right now is the left versus the left. All right? It's the corporate Democrats versus basically more than half of the people that would even vote for Democrats. So it's kind of a losing game for these people that are clinging on to the idea that they could just prop up somebody like a Kamala Harris, and people are just going to like, oh yeah, let's vote for somebody because it's not Trump, or because they said they want to legalize marijuana. And let's just stop with that right now, all right? I don't really care what some political candidate running for office, I don't care if it's dog catcher, I don't care if it's county sheriff. Well, that's a little more important, but I still don't care. And I definitely don't care if somebody running for president of the United States is for legalizing marijuana or not. It's just not important to me. It's not something I really like put a lot of weight behind. You know, like, first of all, that's one of the easiest promises to walk away from. And second of all, they never really make a promise about it. You know, it's always a dog whistle type thing, like, hey, I smoked weed one time, even though I didn't inhale, or even though I wrote a book about it and I still ain't going to do anything about it. I mean, we don't care anymore. And it's not politicians. You know, I got people that are telling me I shouldn't do this video, because what if Kamala Harris eventually is the nominee for the Democrats? Then I got this video on deck where I skewer her. Well, I don't care. I don't care. You know, first of all, there's no way she's gonna make it through the Democratic primaries. All right, so let's get over that right now. And hopefully, I have a little bit of a hand in changing people's minds about this person, but to tell people that they shouldn't criticize people for their record is absurd. And another criticism I've gotten from people that don't want me to criticize Kamala Harris is people are like, hey, what about all the good things in her record? How come you're not talking about that? How come you're not looking at some of the reforms that she was pushing for, or her stance against the death penalty or whatever? You know what, man? That's the most insincere thing I've ever been propositioned with. Like, I'm all of a sudden supposed to take the high road, even though everybody else doing political commentary in the world only focuses on opposition research and negative things about the person that the person is running against, or whoever, whatever. Don't tell me that bullshit that I should focus on the good things she did. There's nothing in there. The few things that are what you might consider are good stances and good acts of deeds of kindness and other accolades that I should mention, cool. But you know what? That's what we don't pat people on the back for doing things that you're supposed to do. She was the prosecutor in one of the most liberal corners of the whole universe, in the Oakland, San Francisco area, where she did not try to go in there and reform what was going on. And that's all you need to know. She went in there, and even if she did her job and did business as usual, she's not anybody that should run as a liberal in any race of a political situation. And why, first of all, why are we asking police, former cops, prosecutors, district attorneys, attorney generals, CIA agents, former CIA assets, FBI agents and former FBI assets, why are we asking them people to make the rules? You know, those are the kind of people that enforce rules. Now all of a sudden it's cool to have the cops writing the rules too? No, that's not what a free society does. That's not how a free society operates. And last time I checked, those were authoritarian positions, and if you're a Democrat, you're supposed to be running in a liberal position. Liberals aren't supposed to be authoritative, are they? Like Antifa or whatever, where you basically beat people into thinking like you. Look, we can sit here and talk about why I should or shouldn't criticize Kamala Harris all day. That's not going to get anybody anywhere. Let's get right to the facts. Now, the reason this all came to my attention is because, I don't know, a minute ago, back in January, Susan Sarandon was getting skewered by the same people that would skewer you if you were saying something bad about Hillary Clinton back in 2016. And when I say something bad, I mean just pointing out her factual record as a public servant. And when Susan Sarandon shared an article from the New York Times, nobody skewered the New York Times for writing the article. It's an opinion piece, and we'll be going over it, saying that Kamala Harris was not a progressive prosecutor. So like I was just saying a minute ago, even if she did her job business as usual, that's not progressive in my book. And it shouldn't be considered liberal in any sense. And the Democratic Party should shriek away from people whose record indicates that they were doing the authoritative right-wing shit. You know, is that who you want in your party? So are you admitting that the Democratic Party is now an authoritative right-wing party? I don't know. Let's get into some of these articles. Now, when I say that people don't oh, how come you don't focus on the good things that she did? There's a few, and it's in here. It's in this article right here. You can find a couple things in here that are pretty cool. All right? And I'm not going to take them away from her. And I might, as I go through the other articles, I might stumble into the details of something that's on this list. But I'm not going to go over this right here. Because this is... like I said, this is just trying to give you a full picture. It's like this article is kind of written in an unbiased sense, that they're just trying to give you an overview of some of the big things that Kamala Harris is known for in the criminal justice world, because that's where she worked her whole life. That's where she went to college. And, you know, of course, we all heard the story by now about how she smoked weed and listened to Snoop Dogg and Tupac. And we also know that she graduated from college in 1986, so rap music wasn't even a thing back then. I was around in 1986, and I don't know, did Nucleus even have an album out yet? Whitechapel Gang and shit like this. We're talking about stuff that had mixtapes. If you lived in a place where I live, you couldn't even get access to it. I mean, the Beastie Boys and Luke Skywalker and all that shit, NWA, that was like not that was for 5 more years later. But who cares about that? The fact that she says she smoked weed while studying criminal justice is one thing, or she's lying about when she smoked the weed. If she smoked the weed while she was listening to Snoop Dogg, well, then she was already working in the criminal justice field, arresting people for smoking weed. Let's face it, man, there's just no good way you can get out of this smoking weed listening to Snoop Dogg shit, because it means you're pretty much a traitor. Like, you smoked weed and kicked back and listened to some Snoop Dogg, and then you just started going right at it, putting people in jail for smoking weed. So not only are you a hypocrite, but you're a fucking straight up traitor. And there's no way that that anybody that considers themselves a liberal, I don't care if you're a liberal, a democratic liberal, whatever you call those, libertarian, right-wing liberal, whatever you are, this should make you cringe as somebody who, if you look up the word liberal in the dictionary and read that definition, somebody that did what Kamala Harris just did, that doesn't really jive, all right? So we're going to go right into this one, the two faces of Kamala Harris, because this just does kind of mention some of the things that she did that you might consider to be good. And I've highlighted a couple things here. I don't think we're going to get into it too much because, you know, there's a lot here. I could spend the whole video just talking about this article here, but we just want to look. I just want to look at these things that they said right here. Credit where credit's due. So the first test of Kamala's principles, Kamala Harris. Sorry if I keep pronouncing her name wrong. But again, this is like another reason she shouldn't be running for president is like nobody knows anything. Nobody heard of this lady, Kamala Harris, before she started doing this stuff where she was indicative of somebody that's going to be running for president. Because she was an attorney general and she started talking about national policy things, especially on the drug war. That's where she kind of got her foot in the door to people that were looking at people that might be throwing their hat in for 2020. And she started talking about the drug war. And even when she was doing that, she was talking about it in past tense. Like it was something that had already been solved because we had Obama. And that's just not the case, man. While she was putting those tweets out, people were getting arrested for marijuana. In fact, the FBI says over the last couple years, marijuana arrests have been going up, even though it's legal in some of the biggest marijuana smoking states in the country. The first test of Harris' principle came in 2004 when she was elected to San Francisco's district attorney. While promising never to impose capital punishment, less than 6 months into her tenure, Harris defied a united chorus of voices from the city's police chief and police rank and file to Democratic Senator Dayen Feinstein, calling for the death penalty for a 21-year-old who killed an undercover police officer. During the officer's funeral, 2,000 officers gave Feinstein a standing ovation after a speech in which she criticized Harris, who was also at the funeral. The state's attorney general and former Senator Barbara Boxer, whose seat Harris now has taken, looked for ways to circumvent Harris's decision, but ultimately failed. Thanks in large part to Harris's steadfastness, the killer was spared the death penalty. In other words, at the very start of her career, Harris defied her own party, her city's police department, and endured public humiliation to defy reactionary demands from Democrats. who were bloodthirsty and wanted to reinstate the death penalty for this cop killer. As we'll learn later on, she took a hard turn from this kind of stance and quite frankly became a cop. So, you know, like I said, you got to give credit where credit's due, right? And when she was running for in 2009, the guy running against her kind of challenged her on the death penalty stance, and she still said, you know, steadfastly that she was against it, and brought up that it was a reason, one of the reasons for it was the disparage between black defendants on death row and white defendants on death row, or any other race for that matter, and just basically the racial disparity of all races and the death penalty. So I give credit where credit's due, but we're gonna see that that's not really, you know, it's like she says it, but on paper something different happens, and we're gonna see what that is in a minute. So to that end, Harris supported reforming California's 3 strikes laws, refrained from seeking life sentences for criminals who committed nonviolent third strikes, and in 2004 instituted the Back on Track program, which put first-time offenders between ages 18 and 24 into 18-month-long city college apprentice programs, which contributed to the city's recidivism rates dropping from 54% to 10% in 6 years. She would later order parole officers not to enforce residency restrictions against sex offenders. Over her time as DA and later California Attorney General, she took a number of progressive stances. She opposed the anti-gay Proposition 8, helped defend Obamacare in court, supported an undocumented immigrant's bid for a new license, sponsored legislation that increased transparency around websites' data collection, more on that later, opposed California's despicable Shoot the Gays ballot initiative, and filed a brief in the Supreme Court encouraging it to allow public universities to consider race in admissions. Under her direction, the state's Justice Department adopted body cameras. California police were made to undergo implicit race bias training, and her office received an award for accelerating the testing of rape kits. Now, a lot of these things that are positive for her that was just mentioned in this paragraph, let's look at every single one of those. She was just at the right place at the right time. And I mean, I know I'm going to get criticized for saying that. Go ahead. I'm going to say it anyway. Every one of those things was going to happen no matter who was in that office of the Attorney General. Now, as far as DA, same thing. All right. The body cameras, that was going on. That was right after Ferguson. That was going to happen. All right. It was happening everywhere. In a place like San Francisco, in the most liberal basically area in the country, it seems like you'd be like, okay, yeah, we already had that. What are you talking about? But no, that was okay, let's push them into doing it. It was a national push. There's a lot of this stuff. Like, now, how can you be like, you can't really give someone too much credit for opposing the despicable Shoot the Gay ballot initiative. Like, is there even a single Democrat that was like a yes vote on that? Because, come on. It's a ballot initiative, first of all. So just to have somebody's public opinion is a good thing. I'll give her credit for that. But, I mean, come on. Obviously, that was one of those things where someone was like, hey, here's where you could get a good thing that we can put on your resume. Because you don't have to say anything. But if you go out and publicly oppose this Shoot the Gay ballot initiative, boom, we can say that later. And, I mean, you know, and I'm sure when later on down the line, when I have somebody that I actually support for a candidate for something, somebody could say the same thing, and I agree, you know, because all politicians do it. It's dirty, and it's like, you look at that, but you also look at the comments that they make that look like the party leaders kind of force their hand to make a comment on something. For example, when a war criminal like George H.W. Bush dies, all of a sudden you get all these people that are liberals supposedly heaping praise at him. And it's like, are you kidding? So, yeah, I mean, obviously there's times when people are saying things just to be politically expedient. But all that criticism aside, I do give her credit for those things, again, where credit's due and how it's due. All right, back to the article. So Harris also had a respectable record of standing up to cooperative malfeasance. Corporate malfeasance, I'm sorry. She filed a front of the court briefing signed by 31 other state attorney generals in 2011 in a Supreme Court case looking to end the practice of drug companies paying competitors to keep generic versions of their drug off the market. And if you remember correctly, that was kind of a capitulation because there was deeper reforms were mentioned in, you know, possible ways to make drug companies not be able to charge somebody $6,000 a dose for something. So that was just a capitulation, and again, it was signed by 31 state attorney generals at the time, and yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things that you do to make people think that you're doing good things. In 2012, she set up a privacy enforcement protection unit in the attorney general's office, which at one point fined a company for serendipitously installing software on its customers' computers. But we're going to learn about this. How much she really cares about privacy. In 2011, she brought the largest fraud settlement in decades against a company that had spent 15 years overcharging the state's insurance program for the poor and disabled. She reached a $6.5 million settlement with two former countywide executives over predatory lending and called for a homeowner's bill of rights, which led foreclosures to plummet in the state and Daily Kos to declare her a bankster's worst nightmare. But we're going to learn that none of it was, this is all just show. Because what she really did was way more painful than what she did to stop the banksters. So she has a strong history of going after polluters. As a district attorney, she created San Francisco's first environmental justice unit and went after cases involving illegal dumping and air pollutions. As Attorney General, she went after companies including BP, Chevron, Comcast, Costco, Boozen, ExxonMobil, and South Carolina Gas Company, which Costco Boonen agreeing to the largest settlement of its kind in 2007 spill in the San Francisco Bay. All right, now this is cool, but you know what? This is a long time ago. If you look at the people that are putting money into her campaign, guess what? I don't even want to tell you, but there's some people that are on this list that are in that list. And this video is too short to go into that kind of detail, and I don't even know why I'm continuing to read these things. But we'll do one more. With Trump in office, Harris became even more outspoken, of course. She's come out in support of single-payer health care and free college tuition for families earning less than $40,000 a year, both of which she's walked back, both of which she doesn't have on a platform on her website. So this is like 3 weeks, I think, after she announced running for president, and there still isn't anything on her website talking about specific policy positions. Nothing, not a thing. And the funny part about it is, it isn't in a vacuum. Other people have their websites up with policy platforms on it, positions and details about how you're going to pay for stuff and all this other thing. Nothing like that on hers. Nothing. And people have called upon her to be specific about her platform positions that she's said publicly, and nothing is there. So whatever. She's a frequent critic of Trump's policies, and that's not hard to do, but it also can be very like not very nuanced. It can also be just people throwing everything they can at the wall and seeing what sticks. And if she's somebody that has been involved in this rhetoric about Russia, and we know Russiagate is just all bullshit, as NBC News just put out a report saying that as the conclusion of the Mueller investigation is coming to a head, both Democrats and Republicans in the committee are basically saying, yeah, there's nothing to see here. There was no collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russian government. And therefore, you can't start demonizing everybody as being a Russian just because they didn't vote for Hillary or whatever. Now they're using this McCarthyistic you're a Russian smear for everything and anything. And of course, if you're on Twitter and you say anything bad about Kamala, well, then you're a Russian too. So in her short time in the Senate, she put forward bills to end the pay gap for black women and clarify the right of people detained at the U.S. ports of entry, and co-sponsored bills to raise the federal minimum wage, close tax loopholes for big oil, ban agricultural use of dangerous pesticides, and stop new oil and gas leases, as well as the renewal of old ones in the Arctic Ocean. All of which are just things you will do because you're about to run for president, of course. And as far as the drilling goes, look, man, Obama signed over 2,000 permits right before Trump walked in the door, and Trump signed another 1,500. It don't matter if you say no new permits, because there's already nowhere left to stick a drill. As far as the other ones go, I mean, come on, minimum wage, this is way too long overdue to be talking about that being something that we should pat anybody on the back for. What we should do is wonder why anybody would be against raising it to like 20 bucks an hour. If minimum wage kept up with inflation, we'd be at least at 20. I mean, I know 15 bucks an hour, that fight has been going on for so long. The 15 bucks an hour really isn't that good out there, you know. It turns out that in most economies around this country, 15 bucks an hour really won't pay all your bills these days, and it's getting worse. All right, so they say, going by this, Harris's record seems impressive, but indeed her commitment to her stated principles is less pristine upon closer inspection. And we are going to bypass the rest of this article, but if you want to read any of these articles, I'm going to link everything I got here in the description below, because there's no way I'm going to be able to go through all this. But I did find some summary action. One of them was this. Is this the thread? Yes. Here's a Twitter account that I stumbled upon while researching Kamala Harris. And this is somebody from the Oakland area. And obviously it's a black guy from the Oakland area. And his Twitter handle is BrotherB @BlakeDon'tCrack. And I want a perspective from somebody who lived under Kamala Harris's reign of terror as a straight up drug war warrior. And I think I found a good thread here. Let's check it out. So Kamala Harris made her career by locking up black people in the Bay Area. Her track record consists of terrorizing black communities through the prison industrial complex. She then became the top cop of California. Her track record consists of rampant anti-blackness. And now this, I guess the reason that I'm interested in the perspective of a person of color that lived under Kamala Harris's reign would be that another thing that happens when you're on Twitter right now and you start talking about Kamala Harris, well, then you're a sexist and you're a racist because she's a woman that's black, so you can't criticize her. And this is the same trick that they used back when Bernie was running for president against Hillary. And if they basically destroyed the whole notion that the word misogyny actually has any sting to it or means anything by calling Bernie a misogynist, or anybody that supports Bernie a sexist. If you don't like Hillary, then you're automatically a sexist, and that's what's going on already with this. Or it's even one step farther. Now you're a racist. oh, you don't want that black woman to succeed, you're a racist. And so I wanted to kind of push back against that, because I'm white, you know, and I don't want people to think, oh, this is just some cringy, you know, alt-white right boy that's sitting in his mom's basement criticizing Kamala Harris because she's black. No, that's not me at all. All right. And by the way, my choice for president would be Nina Turner. She's black, right? Last time I checked. So anyway, please don't call me a sexist or a racist for throwing Kamala Harris under the bus. As you're going to find out, it's just not warranted. But anyway, let me go ahead and read this from this guy. He has podcasts, the Hella Black podcast, it's called. And I'll link that in the description as well. So, Kamala Harris has an even worse track record than Obama. Her career was spent defending and strengthening the prison industrial complex, which is nothing short of modern-day slavery. The state of California was ordered to reduce prison overcrowding, and Kamala Harris argued against it, largely because the state would lost a low-wage workforce. She's literally fought to maintain prison slavery. And that's one of the things I haven't heard a whole lot of in the criticisms of Kamala, is people will talk about her criminal justice record, but they stop short at this notion that she was feeding and helping maintain this slavery, modern day slavery going on, by making sure that there was, you know, able-bodied people in jail that would be ready to go, you know. And we'll find out throughout this exploration that she actually, you know, did. She participated in maintaining and propping it up. And let's go back to the article. Not only did she fight to maintain prison slavery, she also fought legislation that would require her to investigate the brutal executions of black folks by the police. Kamala Harris announcing her run for presidency on MLK Day is truly disrespectful to King's legacy and is a spit in the face to the black radical tradition. Her announcing on MLK Day is propaganda. It is meant to fool black people that she's actually for us. I'm going to say them on this because I'm not black once again. But I am reading the article, and back to it. Kamala Harris is also anti-sex work. She repeatedly sued Backpage, despite many sex workers advocating to keep Backpage, as it kept them safer than being on the streets. And I'm going to say about that issue is, when that was going on, everything that the people advocating for the sex workers, everything that they said has now come true to fruition. The increase in sex trafficking, the increase in violence against sex workers and demonization of sex workers. Now there's been moves by banks and different other financial institutions that are, you know, once they find out that you're a sex worker, they basically cut out your accounts. So there's things that have happened from this that were predicted. And Kamala Harris, her rhetoric back then, I remember, was just right along with everybody else at the time, acting like, oh, this is going to be so good when we shut Backpage down and when we do this and when we do that. Nothing but everything that was said that would happen because of it, all negative, all happened. Kamala Harris started her career during the, quote, tough on crime era, the same era in which Hillary Clinton called black people super predators and that they must be brought to heel. Well, it was Kamala Harris who was bringing black people to heel in Oakland and San Francisco. Kamala Harris is an example of a black person weaponizing their black identity to excuse the violence they have committed against the black community. Take Kamala Harris's race away from the equation and judge her by her actions. Her actions are those of a white supremacist. Kamala Harris follows what I call the, quote, Obama plan. The Obama plan is a campaign strategy that will center a civil rights type narrative and will also use the elements of blackness we like in order to get a black person elected, hence why she announced on MLK Day. For those of us from Oakland, we hate our mayor, Libby Schaaf, but in reality, Kamala Harris has an even worse track record than Libby. Yes, Kamala is from Oakland, but she also locked up half of Oakland and had a smile on her face while doing it. One of the dangers of Kamala being elected in this notion is this notion that everything in America is back to normal. I mean, this is something I hear other commentaries on the left say. They're like, the Democratic Party is using this playbook of electoral politics, especially presidential electoral politics, where it's like business as usual, like the house is not on fire, we're not bombing 7 countries, you know, the economy is fine for everybody. No, that they act like they can use this playbook of electoral politics straight out of the 1970s or something. I don't get it. So, you know, back to the article, but I agree completely that, you know, you just don't, we don't have normal things going on right now. For them to act like, oh, look, Kamala Harris, she's a great person, she deserves to go to the next level. You know, there's nothing that would indicate that. Back to the article, sorry. When in reality, Kamala will strengthen the prison industrial complex as well as create this notion of progress, when in reality she's just a black-faced on a racist empire. Kamala Harris is the enemy of black and oppressed people. She cannot be trusted. She looks very comfortable in a police environment around a bunch of police people. Yeah. So basically, you know, and I'm definitely going to donate some money to this author and this contributor, Blake S. And here's the article he wrote in AdroPunk. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and read this too. Now, this article comes complete with all the receipts. So whatever is said in here, there's an article to back it up. All right. So you go to these articles and you want to, if you really want to know more about it, the link will be in the description for every single article I mentioned. Even if I don't go to the article like I did here and show you the, you know, the actual what's in that article, I might check it out. And you know, like we go back to that one where they were talking about, you know, all the things that Kamala Harris did that were good, that we should be happy about. The thing about that is that was then, and then this is now, and the closer to now you get, the more you find stuff like Kamala Harris defending the death penalty. This is that article, why she wasn't a progressive prosecutor. And that's, you know, that's essentially when you're saying that there was all these things wrong with the drug war. And if you're saying that Kamala Harris was out there even right now, trying to give rhetoric that she's against the drug war, when she starts talking about the things that happen in the drug war that are bad, like when you look at all of her tweets that I mentioned earlier where she's talking about it like it's in the past tense, the things that she's saying, she was the one behind it happening. All right? You know how I know this? Because one of the big trends in the most recent marijuana legalization trends that we're seeing, then it started in, I believe it started in San Francisco and Oakland, and then it moved to, I believe the next place to do it was, I want to say Seattle, and then Philly, and now it's just like dominoes, city after city. What's the trend that I'm talking about? The prosecuting body are telling the police, do not bring me weed cases, we're not prosecuting them. Why didn't she do that? Why didn't she do that? That's, you know, that's what you got to ask yourself right there. When she starts yammering on about how she, you know, wants to reform, or when the drug war was going on, or we're going to, you know, these racial disparages, and she was doing it all. All of that shit she was doing. All right? So here's the article by Blake S. Back to him. Kamala Harris has been tough on black people, not crime. And this is in AdroPunk. And it was published on January 25th, 2019. A couple months ago, I was chilling at my Ponta house watching football. During a commercial break, we started talking about Kamala Harris. My Ponta's older cousin shouted, "Kamala Harris, she's been locking up people up in Rene, offering to the Oakland courthouse since way back in the day and doing it with a smile on her face." He wasn't wrong. Kamala Harris has spent her career as district attorney of Alameda County, San Francisco, and as the attorney general, aka the top cop of California. As someone from the Bay Area living in Oakland, I am constantly reminded of her history of locking black people up in the Bay Area. Her track record consists of terrorizing black communities through the prison industrial complex, and she consistently shown herself to be an enemy of the masses of black people. While I admit the symbol of having a black woman as president sounds nice, it doesn't exclude Kamala Harris from being critiqued. I operate under the political belief that there are no good presidents. Presidents are just figureheads for white supremacist settler colonial state. I aim to have a principled critique of her record that advances black political thought, yet Twitter has been full of misogynistic critiques of Kamala. And yes, let's not go there. I've seen people doing that, you know, talking about she had a relationship with Willie Brown. You know what? Who cares? That's. Did you notice that having any effect on Trump when that happened with him? Oh, look, Trump has affairs with, you know, sex workers and stuff. So what? Big fucking deal. Nobody cares. That's between him and his wife. If you have trust issues with Trump because of that, I think that's where your trust issues with Trump started. You have problems. Also, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about what people are capable of politically. All right, that's a whole different thing. If you want to talk about this Willie Brown thing, there's ways you can talk about that and not even talk about the affair. So let's stop talking about that. That's not important. We can deconstruct this whole Kamala Harris thing with just who she is as a criminal justice warrior, a drug war warrior. Back to the article. It is important we critique her while avoiding that stuff, because there's no place for this in the black liberation movement. True. Misogynoir. Misogyny probably against black women, maybe. I'm not sure what this word means. Sorry, I'm a little bit behind on my vocabulary. Just sucks, let's face it. But anyway, back to the article. Whether it's declining to advocate for the legalization of marijuana in California, in which black people are arrested at a higher rate, or her failure to support body cameras for the police while simultaneously opposing legislation that would require her office to independently investigate police shootings. Kamala is not for black people, or for the people. She even defended the 3 strikes law, in which black people are incarcerated at the rate 12 times higher than whites. Kamala Harris has demonstrated through her actions that she does not value black lives, but rather supports our death via the carceral state. Kamala's support of the death penalty, which is a modern-day form of lynching that has executed hundreds of innocent people, as well as disproportionately affects black people, proves that she doesn't value black lives. Kamala even advocated that an innocent black man named Kevin Cooper, who was a death row inmate and had a trial that was rooted in overt racism and corruption, be executed. She advocated for this even though Kevin had DNA evidence that proved his innocence, yet Kamala opposed it until the New York Times exposed the case. That is pretty bad. And this isn't the only situation where Kamala Harris basically did the wrong thing until the media blew it up in her face, and it was like, okay, now it's a PR disaster if you keep going. So it's just, and that's just further testimony to the fact that a lot of what is being done in a career like Kamala Harris's is PR moves. It's just PR moves all around. until they're doing real shit, which is usually affecting other people in a real negative way. Furthermore, America has no moral ability to be able to decide who lives and who dies. The death penalty is fundamentally racist, yet Kamala supports it, furthering her record as a tough-on-crime politician. Now, me, Brando the Weed Commando, I am very against the death penalty. I live in Michigan. We've never had the death penalty in my lifetime here. And it's absurd. Yeah, let's not even, that's about as much as we need to talk about the death penalty. And I totally agree that it's basically just the modern day lynching of black people. Just go to Texas and look at what their record is. Alright, so not only has she failed to support policies that might improve the lives of black people, she has defended the need for prison slavery. What's dangerous about Kamala is she weaponizes civil rights language, however her actions prove otherwise. For instance, she said the idea we incarcerate people to have indentured servants is one of the worst possible perceptions. I feel very strongly about that. It evokes images of chain gangs. Despite making the connection between prison labor and chain gangs, she, quote, pushed back against a federal order to expand an early parole program, arguing that it would deplete their stock of prison laborers, especially inmates who fight wildfires. That's another thing that I'm pretty against, even though, you know, people think that it's for some reason that I shouldn't be against this too. Like, you know what? I don't care what you think. There's no way that I'm for prison labor being used in situations, especially where it's affecting people that could be getting paid. For example, any kind of clothing, office supplies, like the manufacturing in prisons it's getting worse. And now you're talking about people that are risking their lives putting out these wildfires. They basically get paid nothing. So what, you know, no way. I'm not for it. So back to the article. These inmates make $1 an hour, which is a form of slavery. Kamala is not only a super cop, but an adamant defender of the institution of policing that is rooted in slave patrols. In her video announcement for president, she weaponized words like truth, justice, and equality, and her campaign slogan is, quote, for the people. This is propaganda, and this campaign strategy isn't something new. Rather, it follows what I refer to as the Obama plan. The Obama plan is a campaign strategy that will center a civil rights type narrative such as hope, and will also use the elements of blackness we like in order to get a black person elected. This campaign uses the popular aesthetics of blackness despite the actions of Harris being fundamentally anti-black. Oh, I don't know, like what, going on a morning radio show with some rappers and talking about how you used to smoke weed and listen to Tupac and Snoop. Maybe. Kamala used to use this plan by announcing her run for presidency on MLK Day, a day that celebrates the radical legacy of a black man who stood for the liberation of black lives with both the anti-capitalist and anti-imperialist politic. We went over that already. Again, it's just meant to fool black people into thinking that she's one of these, you know, great black leaders that's gonna come and save you from the white Fuhrer. I don't know. I have no idea. I agree with the premise that it's propaganda, but to me, if this is the level of propaganda that the DNC is on, man, they just really think people are just stupid. And when they're on Twitter beating back against people trying to expose Kamala Harris's record, it's like you're literally trying to beat us into submission. If we're not stupid enough, beat us until our brains don't work anymore, because we're just supposed to accept whatever you throw at us and cheerlead it. That's just not going to happen, man. And I really don't know how you thought that you could get a prosecutor on the ticket running for president without black people criticizing this. You know, you didn't think there would be somebody in Oakland that noticed what you were doing all these years? I mean, come on, man. Back to the article. It is important that we understand that the criminal justice system is built upon the legacy of chattel slavery, and that its primary role is to lock up black, brown, and poor people to maintain a workforce of slaves that supplies America an endless amount of free labor. This being said, Kamala has been the slave auctioneer and sending black people to prison in order to maintain this endless supply of free labor. Yet some claim that she was a progressive prosecutor. How can there be progressive prosecutor in the foundation of a criminal justice system is rooted in slavery and the genocide of indigenous? If she truly was a progressive prosecutor or a good prosecutor, she would make sure that prosecutors did not exist. That's what I'm saying. There was no good slave owners or slave auctioneers, just as there are no good prosecutors. And that's what I said. I've tweeted this several times since she started running. I'm like, hey, as somebody that grew weed my whole life during Prohibition, I don't really have any friends in the prosecutor's office or at the police station or at the DEA's office or, you know, anywhere else where they enforce marijuana laws and put people in jail. That's not the kind of people I want to like chum it up with. I mean, even though marijuana is legal now where I live, it doesn't matter. These people still hate people that smoke weed. That hasn't worn off at all. Kamala Harris is what the black radical tradition calls a neocolonialist. And before I read about neocolonialism, let me just say that most of my life as an adult, I've lived in black communities in Flint and in Detroit. And yeah, I sympathize a lot more with the black struggle than most white people I know of. All right. And right now I live in a pretty white community, pretty much MAGA country. So I see the difference between people on the white side of the fence and people in the struggle. But anyway, neocolonialism is the integration of a colonized person into the colonized system in order to enact the policies of the colonizer. That being said, Kamala is a black face doing the job of white supremacist system. Neocolonialism is a white supremacist colonial propaganda, and it is meant to fool the masses of oppressed people that becoming the oppressor leads to freedom. Don't be fooled by symbolism. As Obama's presidency showed us, symbolism does not mean progress for the masses of black people. It is clear Kamala Harris is not for the people. She is for the American empire. Don't let her identity as a black woman or her identity as an AKA or her status as an alumna from Howard University fool you into thinking she actually is for us. Kamala, don't. You know, blop, blop, bleep, bleep. And that was a great article from the perspective that I wanted to explore, because like I said, I'm not black, and when I go out there and start criticizing Kamala Harris, I don't want people to think, hey, you're just some white dude that, you know, don't like black people. That couldn't be farther from the truth. And I feel like I've already wasted enough time on this, but we're going to go over some of these details, or at least look at some of the articles that were mentioned real quick. So she disagrees with statewide police body camera regulations. Huh? I thought that one article said she was for body cams or whatever. No, it was exactly like I said it was. At the time that body cams were coming to a police department near you because of Ferguson and the outrage over the incidences where there was no body cams, supposedly, people were pushing for mandatory body cams in every city. So she was just doing the expedient, politically correct, politically good for you later thing. But let's look at this article from 2015 and see exactly what she was saying then. She said, I, as a general matter, believe that we should invest in the ability of law enforcement leaders in specific regions and with their deputies to use discretion to figure out what technology they are going to adopt based on the needs that they have and the resources that they have, Harris told reporters in Sacramento. Huh? No, body cams were basically going to be mandated and bought for you. Like, you're a police outfit. You don't have to worry about where your money, how much resources you have to buy cameras. That's something that the public wants, and they'll put them on your cops if they need to. And then she says, I don't think we can have a one-size-fits-all approach to this. Yes, we can. Any kind of pushback like this is just somebody that is saying, no, we don't want them. So what about her on this comment? She said there needs to be a broader acknowledgement that certain communities distrust law enforcement. Quote, we have a history in this country that we can be proud of, and that there's a part of the history that we are not proud of, Harris said, adding, but we also have to acknowledge that the relationship of trust is a reciprocal relationship and that everyone has a responsibility to be part of the leading that effort. Okay, so why not the body cameras? Are you saying that the public needs to trust the police first by not worrying about whether they have body cameras or not? Right around the same time, she was talking about the death penalty. So, while attorney generals have a duty to enforce existing laws to defend them from constitutional challenge, their fundamental duty is to serve justice. Accordingly, they may choose not to defend laws that are unjust per se, raise grave constitutional problems, or constitute terrible public policy, which is what I was saying about she could have easily said, no, I'm not prosecuting weed possession cases or whatever. We have medical marijuana, and people by and large want to just legalize weed. This is the San Francisco Bay Area, for God's sakes. Both Harris and Brown previously abandoned the state's defense of Prop 8, which prohibited same-sex marriage, from challenges in the federal courts. Similarly, certain prosecutors nationwide had announced that they would stop aggressively prosecuting petty drug offenses such as marijuana possession, so they may focus on serious crimes. But she didn't. By the same token, Harris and Brown could simply concede that California's death penalty system is unconstitutional and stop defending it in federal courts. It is what it is. Alright. You know, you can look at a lot of things that she did and say, at the time, it feels to me like, you know, almost as if somebody was putting her to a test of some sorts. Like, are you going to continue to do this for us? Or are you going to do the thing that's going to be the easy thing to do that's actually the right thing to do? You know, and if you do the thing for us, though, then your future is this, you know. And it seems like her career path basically looked like she was heading towards more authoritarian stuff as she went along. Like, I don't know if this is supposed to be to reform those places, but if it was, how come she didn't? So anyway, let's just go ahead and read this article. I highlighted the stuff that is important, and I might have mentioned something on this list before. I'm not trying to pile on or whatever, like, you know, and it seems like if you've been trying to look into this story, you probably already know all this stuff by now. And there's also dozens of people out there that have YouTube channels, ranging from we have all the progressive people like Kyle Kulinski, Mike over at Humanist Report, Jimmy Dore, Graham Elwood. You know, there's a whole bunch of people. I believe David Dole has even done a piece about Kamala Harris's record. So there's no shortage of people on YouTube that's talking about this. Or, you know, if you're looking for the critique of Kamala Harris, you can find it. You know, everybody has, the shockwave has went through the progressive side of the Democratic Party. Like I said earlier, this battle is as real as it's going to get between the progressives and basically the older, comfortable liberals of the Democratic Party that, you know, they don't care about whether or not we try to get Medicare for all. They don't care because they have some kind of health insurance that's not a problem for them, or they don't care about $15 minimum wage or more because they're comfortable. Whatever they're doing in life, they don't care about somebody making wage earning money. You know, they don't, for some reason, they don't seem to care about the war, which when Obama, he made some campaign promises that he was going to end the wars and bring back the troops and shut down the black sites like Guantanamo Bay. And instead, we were in 2 wars when he got there, and now we're in like 7. So, you know, and these people will sit there and tell you that Obama was the greatest president ever, and they won't mention any of that. They won't mention the fact that he helped keep Wall Street deregulated by not enforcing Dodd-Frank, which was the regulations that were put in place after the crash in 2008. And, you know, quite frankly, Dodd-Frank is great if you enforce it. But since nobody enforced it, the banks grew, and now they're bigger than they were before that crash. So, you know, basically there's people out there that care about these things. For some reason, the name that they get given changes throughout the years. And right now the name that they give to the people on the left of the Democratic Party is progressives, which I don't like, because labels suck. And of course, as soon as you get comfortable thinking that that's the label, then you see people like Ben Shapiro and Hannity and even people on CNN like Jake Tapper call all kinds of people progressive. You know, they'll call Nancy Pelosi progressive. They'll call Kamala Harris progressive. You know, what is progressive about a prosecutor? Well, you know, if you're one of those prosecutors like I was talking about earlier that was saying, hey, don't bring those marijuana cases to my desk, we're going to throw them out. We ain't doing that. That's what she could have done. It says that's what she could have done. I know that's what she could have done because I see people doing it all the time. That's the fight in the party. That's the fight on the left. That's the fight in this country. You know, there's only 2 factions in this country. There's people that believe in, you know, helping other people and that the government is there for that reason. And there's people that think I don't even know what they think. You're supposed to just give your tax money to the government and let them buy more bombs and not ask any questions, while they give tax breaks to the richest people in the world that don't need any money and won't do anything with that money except for throw it in a bank offshore so no one can look at it or touch it or tax it. All right? You can call me a communist if you want, but I'm for the people. And Kamala Harris, she is not for the people. The ideological battleground in this country is not right versus left. It's people that want to get shit from the government versus people that want the government to basically lock you in a cage and tell you to fuck off while they spend your money on bombs and giving corporations money like Jeff Bezos. That's why he didn't go build his thing in New York, because they weren't about to give him billions of dollars to do it. Why? Because you don't need it. Pretty sure Amazon will do just fine without their headquarters in New York. All right, so that's the battle. And I'm turning blue in the face talking about it. Let's go ahead and read this article that, if you remember, Susan Sarandon got skewered by a bunch of these kind of people who act like it's her fault that Trump got elected. Okay, we can have a whole nother video about that. But the article was that Kamala Harris was not a progressive prosecutor. What is a progressive prosecutor? This was written by Lara Bazelon, a law professor and the former director of Loyola Law School Project for the Innocent in Los Angeles. So we're just going to skip right to the highlights. Time after time, when progressives urged her to embrace criminal justice reforms as district attorney and then the state's attorney general, Ms. Harris opposed them or stayed silent. Most troubling, Ms. Harris fought tooth and nail to uphold wrongful convictions that had been secured through official misconduct that included evidence tampering, false testimony, and the suppression of crucial information by prosecutors. Consider her record as San Francisco's district attorney from 2004 to 2011. Ms. Harris was criticized in 2010 for withholding information about a police laboratory technician who had been accused of intentionally sabotaging her work and stealing drugs from the lab. After a memo surfaced showing that Mrs. Harris's deputies knew about the technician's wrongdoing and recent conviction, but failed to alert defense lawyers, a judge condemned Mrs. Harris's indifference to the systemic violation of the defendant's constitutional rights. Ms. Harris contested the ruling by arguing that the judge, whose husband was a defense attorney and had spoken publicly about the importance of disclosing evidence, had a conflict of interest. Ms. Harris lost, and then more than 600 cases handled by the corrupt technician were dismissed, thankfully. And now, you know, I'm not all completely like sure that all 600 of those cases were nonviolent drug offenses, so there might have been some stuff in there that maybe shouldn't have just got dismissed, you know. So no matter what side of criminal justice or criminal justice reform or the drug war you're on, that 600 dismissals is probably not a good number. I mean, in my opinion, it's probably good because it probably saved a lot of money. California already has a ridiculous prison problem, and sounds like that was help. Ms. Harris also championed state legislation under which parents whose children were found to be habitually truant in elementary school could be prosecuted, despite concerns that it would disproportionately affect low-income people of color. That's usually the only people that are affected by that, so that is just a cold-hearted thing, you know. And I don't know, again, when I'm on the internet talking about these things, and when that story broke and everybody was talking about that, of course you were being, you know, you were getting into the conversation that you shouldn't belong in if you were talking about that and Harris in a bad light on that. Apparently, you know, people are for that, which is absurd. If you're for that, you are absurd. So I'm not going to talk about that anymore. I'm just going to say locking parents up because their kids are not in school enough, that is weird. That is, I don't know how you think that's going to fix any problems. But a lot of times these kids are missing school. It's not exactly because the kids are, you know, just being delinquent and the parents can do anything about it. And even if the kid is delinquent, how much can a parent really do about it? To the point where you're going to be like, okay, maybe the kid wants their parent to go to school. Like, this policy is just garbage. So let's just call it what it is. It's right-wing authoritarian garbage. Usually right-wing authoritarian policies have one common thread, is they don't make any sense, they don't look like they're going to solve any problems, and it just punishes people for behavior that is perceived as being bad. But you don't really look into it because there's usually they don't care. They don't care about the nuance. They just say, oh, your kid missed school, in jail you go. So when a federal judge in Orange County ruled that the death penalty was unconstitutional in 2014, Ms. Harris appealed. In a public statement, she made the bizarre argument that the decision, quote, undermines important protections that our court provides to defendants. That's kind of a weird way to put it, man. And there's approximately 740 men and women awaiting execution in California who might disagree. In 2014, she decided to take the position of Prop 47, a ballot initiative approved by voters that reduced certain low-level felonies to misdemeanors. So she could have took a position on it, but she didn't. And that's called being politically expedient, again, like I mentioned earlier, where she knows that if she does say something, then later on down the line, that might affect whether she gets promoted to the next position or not in the right-wing authoritative criminal justice system. She left that year when a reporter asked if she would support the legalization of marijuana for recreational use. So again, this time in a situation where she had already said that she was for some kind of criminal justice reform. She even talked about the drug war like it was a bad thing, and that's where we should focus on the prison problem, is not getting people in prison by doing something about these policies. But yet, when confronted with the possibility of changing these policies, she laughed at it against a Republican who was for legalization nonetheless. So, and you know, the tides were definitely in favor of legalization in California in 2014. Hello. As a matter of fact, they were already going to legalize marijuana, but the proposition failed. Did it fail to get on the ballot? I can't remember if it got on the ballot or not back then. But the first time California tried a proposition to legalize marijuana, it either didn't get on the ballot due to lack of signatures, or it got on and it got voted no. Not sure exactly which one of those it was. I can't remember, sorry. Ms. Harris finally reversed course in 2018, long after public opinion had shifted on the topic. Of course, a couple years after California voted to legalize marijuana. In 2015, she opposed a bill requiring her office to investigate shootings involving officers. Remember, this is also the same year that she was in this thing about the body cams. She refused to support statewide standards regulating the use of body-worn cameras by police officers. That's 2 strikes in the year 2015 when this was a hot topic. This was the kind of topic that, you know, that's when the All Lives Matter people came up out of the woodworks and, you know, just kind of undermine the Black Lives Matter movement and make it look like a terrorist organization and stuff. So, you know, again, when you're the person that's in an authoritative position like Attorney General, people go to you to ask your opinion. Some people are on the liberal side that are like, yeah, we should have body cameras on all cops. We should definitely investigate police shootings and have a database and, you know, follow through on prosecutions of police that are doing wrongful shootings. These things were super big time hot topics in 2015, and she basically, you know, she opposed the bill, and then she refused to support the standards of regulating the body cams. So both times she did the politically expedient thing and capitulated to the right-wing authoritative position. Because that's what you do when you're in criminal justice. If you want a job higher up the ladder later on, there's other ways to do it, but we're talking about what we can actually point to and be like, hey, right here you could have done this and that. That would have been great, but instead you did those and the other. For this, she incurred criticism from an array of left-leaning reformers, including Democratic state senators, the ACLU, and San Francisco's elected public defender. The activist Felicia Jones, who had supported Ms. Harris for years, asked how many more people need to die before she steps in. And like I said, this was in 2015 when you had, you know, you had Michael Brown, you had all these people, all these police-involved killings that were on TV. We had the videos, and it was just getting to the point where it was just disgusting to turn the TV on, because you were either embroiled in a controversy of a police-involved killing of an unarmed black man, or you were watching a protest where, you know, people were burning down their city because a cop was not prosecuted for shooting an unarmed black man. And meanwhile, when people are looking for people to make statements and use the bully pulpit and sign legislation to make sure that things happen to turn this around, or even make it, you know, make an effort, like the body cams and like the police shooting investigations, we get nothing from her. And this is just sad. This is a sad missed opportunity for someone that claims now to be a criminal justice reformer and claims now that she's appalled at the injustices of the drug war. When this is, police shooting unarmed black men, well, that's part of the drug war, in my opinion. So, worst of all, though, is Mrs. Harris' record in wrongful conviction cases. Now, this is an area I haven't really talked a lot about so far in this video, but this is another very disturbing situation where, in my opinion, if you think I'm wrong making this video and telling people that they should definitely not vote for Kamala Harris ever, no matter what, I don't care if the big bad fucking wolf is running against her. These situations where she presided over and held steadfastly to these wrongful convictions is unforgivable. Point blank, full stop, end of discussion. This is unforgivable territory right here. If a person is sitting in a jail cell for 1 minute on a wrongful conviction, and you know that that's what's going on, and you have the power to do something about it, you're an unforgivable piece of shit for not doing something about it. This is the worst possible scenario, especially for somebody in this position of power that could have done something about it, that claims to be a progressive or claims to be a liberal or whatever you're trying to claim. You're looking like some kind of crazy right-wing authoritative maniac when you don't let somebody out of a cage and they're not supposed to be there. All right, so consider George Gage, an electrician with no criminal record who was charged in 1999 with sexually abusing his stepdaughter, who reported the allegations years later. The case largely hinged on the stepdaughter's testimony, and Mr. Gage was convicted. Afterward, the judge discovered that the prosecutor had unlawfully held back potentially exculpatory evidence, including medical reports indicating that the stepdaughter had been repeatedly untruthful with law enforcement. Her mother even described her as a pathological liar who lives her lies. In 2015, when the case reached the United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit in San Francisco, Miss Harris's prosecutors defended the conviction. They pointed out that Mr. Gage, while forced to act as his own lawyer, had not properly raised legal issues in the lower court as law required. Now remember, this was in 1999 when the charges were originally brought up. So we're talking already 16 years later. This guy had already been sitting in prison for 16 years before it got to the Court of Appeals. They pointed out that Gage, while forced to act as his own lawyer, had not properly raised legal issues in the lower court. That is an absurd thing to slap somebody with at an appeals hearing, especially when they were forced to be their own lawyer. If they had a lawyer appointed to them, that would be grounds for a mistrial right there, that the lawyer failed to properly represent you. But if it's yourself, then they can just say, oh, well, that's what you get for trying to represent yourself. But he was forced to represent himself. So much wrong with this case. It just makes me furious. The appellant judges acknowledged that this impediment and sent the case to mediation, a clear signal for Ms. Harris to dismiss the case. Again, here's another opportunity she had to go ahead and be like, I'm going to do the right thing and let this guy out of that cage. When she refused to budge, the court upheld the conviction on that technicality, and now he is still serving out his prison sentence. Now it's 4 years later. This is 20 years that this guy has already been sitting there. He has to sit there for 50 more years. It's a 70-year sentence. 70 years. It's not bad enough that you're already in prison for 20 years. Now you know you're never going to get out. I don't know. I don't have words for it, and there's no forgiving somebody for this. She had 2 opportunities to let this guy go. That case is not an outlier. Ms. Harris has also fought to keep Daniel Larson in prison on a 28-year-to-life sentence for possession of a concealed weapon, even though his trial lawyer was incompetent and there was compelling evidence of his innocence. Relying on a technicality again, Ms. Harris argued that Mr. Larson failed to raise his legal arguments in a timely fashion. This time she lost. She also defended Johnny Baca's conviction for murder, even though the judges found the prosecutor presented false testimony at the trial. She relented only after a video of the oral argument received national attention and embarrassed her office. And then there's Kevin Cooper, the death row inmate whose trial was infected by racism and corruption. He sought advanced DNA testing to prove his innocence, but Ms. Harris opposed it. After the New York Times expose of the case went viral, she reversed her position. So again, she does this thing where she will do whatever it takes to get the promotion by her right-wing overlords that want to see her do the wrong thing. And, you know, this is just disgusting. She'll do the wrong thing until the very last second when, you know, the New York Times is writing an expose about you. All this is a shame because the state's top prosecutor has the power and the imperative to seek justice. In cases of tainted convictions, that means conceding error and overturning them instantly. Rather than fulfilling that obligation, Ms. Harris turned legal technicalities into weapons so she could cement injustices. In The Truth We Hold, Ms. Harris recently published Memoir. She writes, quote, "America has a deep and dark history of people using the power of the prosecutor as an instrument of injustice." She adds, "I know this history well, of innocent men framed, of charges brought against people without sufficient evidence, of prosecutors hiding information that would exonerate defendants, of the disproportionate application of the law." All too often, she was on the wrong side of that history. And oh my God, for her to even write about it like that, knowing that she was that, is again the hypocrisy that I mentioned when I read her tweets over the last 2 years leading up to today on her run-up to run for president, where she always talks about the drug war. And she talks about, well, you know, the drug war did this and that, like it's some kind of a past tense thing. Back during the drug war, they used to lock people up because they were black just because they smelled weed. You know, it's like you're the one that did that. You're the one that was doing all these injustices that you're tweeting about now. You talk about you want to reform the criminal justice system. When you were there, you had the chance to do things that would have been, you know, looked back on as reforms. Now, you know, now you're going for the next highest job. You're just like, you know, we look at what the president does and what the president can do. One thing that the president really can't do is doing criminal justice reforms. There's really nothing that's like, you can't make that campaign promise. You're not going to do anything to reform the criminal justice system. It's not the president's job. Now, this is the last item I have here. And believe me, there's more. But in the interest of not piling on, I'm not going to pile on. I'm going to leave it at that because I know I'm going to get pushback. And the pushback's going to be that I didn't talk enough about the good things that she did. Well, I don't give a fuck about the good things that she did. Did you just hear the last part that I did? Those cases where there was innocent people in cages and she didn't let them out? That's unforgivable shit. So I don't give a flying fuck about anything that she did that you could call good. And she don't get second chances with people like me that care about this stuff. People that have been on the other side of these prosecutors. People that have been on the other side of these attorney generals who have absolutely no heart or soul. Steve Mnuchin bank scandal, which to me should be a big front page scandal. This should be the number one reason why, if you're one of those resistance Democrats or whatever you want to call your blue wave donut Twitter, you know who you are. You people who are backing Kamala Harris like she's some kind of a queen or a god or something, you guys are not even talking about the fact that Steve Mnuchin is literally the Treasury Secretary of this country because of her. Again, because of her action to not do something and her office's malfeasance. Now we have a straight up crook, a bankster crook who stole people's houses using illegal foreclosure policies. That's the guy running our country's purse. And you can thank Kamala Harris single-handedly for that, all you resistance folks out there. It isn't Putin's fault that these people got thrown out of their house. It isn't a bunch of Russian troll farms or fucking bots on Twitter. It's Kamala Harris for not prosecuting One West Bank. Go ahead and read this quick highlighted area in this article by David Dayen, written in January of 2017. General Kamala Harris on Wednesday, Attorney General, vaguely acknowledged the Intercept's report about her declining to prosecute Steve Mnuchin's One West Bank for foreclosure violations in 2013, but offered no explanation. It's a decision my office made, she said in response to a question from the Hill shortly after being sworn in as California's newest U.S. Senator. Now, keep in mind that this is just going along with the pattern that I've been talking about with her. When her office does something good because the whole country's doing it, like, hey, let's do body cams on the cops. Okay, cool, let's do that. Even though she opposed it, somehow she still gets credit for it in that first article that I read. You know, this one back here. The things you don't know about Kamala and the two faces about Kamala seem to have some nice things to say about her. Especially with this body cam thing. Well, turns out it's just lip service. Just like this. Just like when something bad happens, when your office does something shitty, you can just be like, oh, you know, it's just my office. We just did this thing. You were the main person, the head of this office when this happened. So when you say it was a decision my office made, yeah, you are part of that. That falls on you. And also, if you wanted to file the charges, guess what? You could have done it. Really wouldn't have mattered if your office had pooled together and said, you know what, we don't want to do it. All you had to say is, you know what, bullshit, we're doing it. We went and we followed the facts and evidence, and it's a decision my office made. We pursued it just like any other case. We go and we take a case wherever the facts lead us. That is the most wishy-washy platitude, and that's what you get from heads of offices that don't do the right thing. You get like, oh yeah, we did, yeah, it wasn't that big of a deal. Yeah, it was that big of a deal. Let's see how big of a deal that was. Mnuchin is Donald Trump's nominee to run the Treasury Department and served as CEO of One West from 2009 to 2015. In an internal memo published on Tuesday by The Intercept, prosecutors at the California Attorney General's office said they found over 1,000 violations of foreclosure laws by his bank during that time, and predicted that further investigation would uncover many thousands more. Does anyone have a running total of how many thousands of houses were foreclosed by One West Bank? I would like to know that number. The investigation into what the memo called widespread misconduct was closed after Harris's office declined to file a civil enforcement action against the bank. So, what'd she just say back here? A decision that we followed the facts and evidence, and it was a decision my office made. We pursued it like any other case. Oh, really? So you're saying that the prosecutors at your office who were recommending that you file the charges, what the fuck? They offered you 1,000 violations, over 1,000, and said there were many thousands more. Why would you not put the charges forward? Well, I'll tell you why. Her statement on Thursday didn't explain how involved she was with the decision to not prosecute or why the decision was made. And it never will. Her decision to not prosecute may make her new colleagues weary of... so basically, after all this, then they went around and tried to get somebody to say something about it. And she ended up not voting for Mnuchin because, let's just face it, they only needed a couple Democrats. I think they only needed one Democrat to vote. And it was Manchin, Joe Manchin from West Virginia. He's pretty much a Republican. He fucking was the only vote they needed. They knew they had it. It's probably like some kind of a back conference call, like, hey, Nancy Pelosi called up actually Senator Chuck Schumer probably called all the other senators up and was like, hey, guess what, guys? We don't need to worry about, you can all vote no. You got cover. Yep, don't worry. Manchin's going to vote yes, and all the Republicans are going to vote yes, so Mnuchin's good. Good. Okay, have a nice day. That's how that went. They couldn't get anybody to comment on it. It's because she tainted it by not prosecuting Mnuchin. Everybody, it was kind of like a bird whistle, like, oh, okay, there must be some corrupt money changing hands, so let's just let this one go. That's how Washington works, ladies and gentlemen. That's how it works. When they see, oh, this Mnuchin guy's doing this shady shit that everybody should be cringy at, but this lady here, Kamala, she didn't prosecute him, so they must have some deal working. Let's not interfere with that. That's what happened, man. That is exactly what happened. They couldn't get a comment from any of the Senate Democrats. They all vowed to put up a fight against it, yet not one senator had commented publicly about the leaked memo, which received media coverage in Politico, Bloomberg, New York Post, CBS News, Vanity Fair, CNN, CNBC, and other outlets. And that memo is, like I said, the one up here. So they even tried to get comments from the people that usually talk shit the most about banks, like Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. They wouldn't even give comments about this. And of course Chuck Schumer wouldn't, because if you look into who gets money from who in Washington, see, the thing about Steve Mnuchin is he just started giving money to Republicans this election cycle. Well, the one where Trump got elected, 2016 election cycle. Before that, he was giving money to Democrats. Right here. He's given money to Chuck Schumer. He's given money to Harris. He's given money to John Edwards, John Kerry, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, Chuck Schumer. He gave money to Schumer in 98, 99, and 2002. And I'm pretty sure, I would be very surprised if he didn't give money to the California Democrats at the time before the 2016 cycle. So, here we go. This is Kamala Harris fails to explain why she didn't prosecute Mnuchin. And then here is why. Harris was the only 2016 Senate Democratic candidate to get cash from Mnuchin. Highly suspicious. In the 2016 election cycle, Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin donated to only one Democratic Senate candidate. Now this tells you that Joe Manchin did vote yes for him and Kamala voted no. Mnuchin gave Harris's campaign $2,000 last year, according to records from Federal Election Commission, making her the only Democrat who ran on the national level to receive money from him that cycle. It always amazes me how cheap it is to buy these politicians. And yes, I'm saying that he bought her. That's all it took. Like, yo, I'm gonna, go ahead and just give you this $2,000 for your campaign. Have a nice day. He didn't even have to say, don't file charges. That's pretty much understood, Tyrone Gale, Harris's press secretary, questioned the idea that campaign contribution would influence her vote. Oh, come on. Senator Harris thoroughly evaluates each nominee based on their record and confirmation hearing, nothing else. Look, we don't care about the vote. That was cover. That's cover to say, oh yeah, no corruption here. That's not important. That's a whole different ballgame. Now that he was sworn into office, now he can do her a favor later down the road, because the favor she did for him was big. That was a huge favor. He didn't go to jail or even get prosecuted, or he would be still tied up in court to this day. if she would have filed charges back in 2014. Whatever, man. The bottom line is that was huge. And we didn't expect her to also vote for him. That would just look obvious. Like, oh, he gave money to my campaign. You know, it probably would have been a good idea for her to vote for him, because then it would at least look like that's why the $2,000 bribe happened, for the yes vote, not for the bigger thing that was the more corrupt thing that affected way more people at the time. And of course, there's some cover here from her press secretary. Quote, Senator Harris believes Secretary Mnuchin's record of profiting off of the misfortune of thousands of families who lost their homes during the U.S. mortgage meltdown made him unqualified to manage our nation's finances and advocate for working people. Even that isn't worded properly. Even that takes away from the crime that Mnuchin committed. Oh, he profited off the misfortune of thousands of families? No, he profited off of doing illegal foreclosures. On top of people already having problems and struggling to pay, instead of trying to help anybody and maybe help people keep their homes and their investments, nah, not Steve Mnuchin. He did the dirtiest tricks you can possibly do to steal those homes from people. Harris came under scrutiny with her relationship to Mnuchin after it was revealed in a story by The Intercept that Harris, as California Attorney General, had declined to file a civil enforcement action against One West Bank, the bank for which Mnuchin served as CEO over the foreclosures. And let's not forget, we are talking about tens of thousands of people losing their homes, the illegal foreclosure policies that this bank, One West Bank, was using. And quite frankly, I don't know what the resolution has been on that. But if no one got in trouble, then the thinking is that they're still doing it. Well, you know, I mean, that's pretty much all I want to... I've spent way more time on this than I wanted to. That's all I got on this, guys. I'm waiting for things to happen. And as more people throw their hats in, I might have to do some more of these videos. I mean, we have Cory Booker. We all know he has his marijuana Justice Act. So, you know, people think I should maybe talk about these presidential candidates and the fact that whether they're for or against marijuana legalization. I don't care. Like I said earlier, I brushed a little bit on, it doesn't matter. These presidents they're not doing anything for us. They're not looking out for the people. They haven't been for a very long time, not any time in my lifetime. And they're not going to affect meaningful change. Like when Obama was president, he had all these things for marijuana that were just pieces of paper that as soon as Trump and his boogeyman Sessions got in there, they just lit that shit on fire and said they could do whatever they want. And guess what, though? They didn't do it. So we've already had the worst possible boogeyman, Jeff Sessions, as the fucking Attorney General of the country, with the most right-wing, authoritative, like, fascistic type dude, Trump. You know, if you don't think that's the case, then what the fuck are we're in a national emergency right now because this little baby boy wants a wall to stop the drugs that are supposedly... I can do a whole video about that if I want to. But no. They didn't do anything to weed being legalized. In fact, under Trump's watch, that might be when it gets legalized nationwide. And then the Republicans can do a big victory dance in the end zone talking about they're the party that legalized marijuana. And believe me, that is something that you can do an end zone dance for in this day and age. You don't lose political points for that. You get pats on the back. So I no longer give a fuck about what presidential candidate is for marijuana legalization and what one ain't. I don't care. I want to know about their record when it comes to these policies. That's more important to me. When it comes to Kamala Harris talking about legalizing marijuana while smoking blunts with fucking Snoop Dogg before blunts were even invented, I'm pretty fucking skeptical. I'm not having it. I'm not buying it. Same with Cory Booker. I don't really understand, you know, that's basically I never heard of him in the fight to legalize marijuana until one day in 2017, all of a sudden he's got the most liberal, most, you know, crazy legalization platform in the history of American politics. Like, come on. And it was obvious that he was doing that as a, like, there was a Bernie Sanders blueprint from 2016 when Bernie Sanders, he knew he was going to run for president in 2016. Well, in 2015, he put a bill on the floor to take marijuana off the Controlled Substances Act and legalize and tell states to do their own legalization. It's almost like Cory Booker's exactly, except for Cory's even goes a little farther. So that was the blueprint. Elizabeth Warren did it. So did, I don't know, a lot of people. Chuck Schumer. Like, I doubt he's going to run for president, but I don't know. That's all I got on this. You know, it's just ridiculous that we even have to make these videos about these corporate Democrats trying to, like, just act like everybody should like their candidate and not worry about their record. And don't let anybody out there smear anybody because they're criticizing Kamala Harris's record, but then all of a sudden you get called some kind of a racist or a bigot or a sexist because you're talking about Kamala Harris. Bottom line, guys, is if you want to beat Trump, you got to beat Trump. Kamala Harris, there's no way in any, and there's no way you can make a case for her even coming close to beating Trump. Trump would have to really do some disastrous shit between now and the election for a person like Kamala Harris to be able to win. It's not possible. It's really not going to happen. And even if Trump does do bad, horrible shit, how horrible does it got to be for people to not like Trump anymore? I mean, that seems to be the theme of this whole Trump era, all the way back to when he was screaming about Mexicans being rapists and murderers and shit, way back when he first threw his hat in. And ever since then, it's been one thing after another that he did or said that's gonna sink him. That's the final thing, guys. No, I don't see it. I don't really see it. It's like he said, he could walk up to somebody on Fifth Avenue and put a bullet in their head and probably still have the same amount of support. So, you know, give me a break on thinking that Kamala Harris is even close to a good, you know, candidate to run against Trump. You got to have some reason why you're running. You know what I mean? Like, most people that are running for president in my lifetime, maybe not in the last couple sessions, but usually they did something. They got their name out there because they did something that people really like. What the fuck is that with Kamala Harris? Nothing. I see nothing. All right, that's all I got.